Have you ever been judged for doing something you love? Something that brings you pride, but others see as lesser? That's exactly how I felt when my own son started mocking my job. He couldn't understand why I chose to work with my hands, fixing cars, instead of wearing a suit in an office. To him, my job wasn't a real career. It wasn't good enough. And every time I heard him belittle what I did, it stung. I spent my life working hard, doing something that made me feel like I was contributing to the world, providing for my family. But here was my own flesh and blood, the one I did it all for, dismissing it like it was nothing. It hurt more than I ever let on. For years, I kept my head down, focused on my work, hoping that one day he'd understand. But one day, after a particularly humiliating conversation, I realized that I had to do more than hope. I had to show him. I had to show him that success doesn't come from a title, from an office desk, or from society's idea of what's right. It comes from dedication, passion, and a willingness to put in the work, no matter what anyone else thinks. That was the turning point. That's when I decided to do something that would leave him speechless. I wasn't going to sit back anymore. I was going to turn my passion into something big, something undeniable. And what happened next? Let's just say my son's view of success would never be the same again. Justin had always been a simple man, with a work ethic as strong as the tools he used every day. Born into a family of blue-collar workers, he understood the value of a hard day's work long before he ever picked up a wrench. His father had been a mechanic his grandfather before him, and Justin was proud to carry on that tradition. His life was rooted in the grease of engines, the hum of power tools, and the satisfaction of a job well done. It wasn't glamorous, but it was fulfilling. And for Justin, that was enough. He spent his days working in a small, cluttered auto repair shop on the outskirts of town. The shop wasn't much to look at, just a few old garages, a faded sign out front, and a workbench covered in oil stains, but it had a charm of its own. It was a place where the hum of the engines and the rhythmic clang of tools were a constant soundtrack. Justin loved it. The shop had been his refuge for as long as he could remember. It was where he had learned the trade from his father, and now it was where he spent most of his days, keeping the wheels of the town's cars turning. The work was hard, long hours, often in the sweltering heat, covered in grease, with only the occasional coffee break to keep him going, but Justin didn't mind. He took pride in his craft. He could fix just about anything. From old jalopies to high-end vehicles, Justin had seen it all. It wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about problem-solving, about taking something that was broken and making it whole again. It was about providing a service that people could rely on. To Justin, it wasn't just a job. It was a responsibility. His reputation in the town was built on his reliability and his integrity. He treated every car as if it were his own, ensuring that when people left his shop, they were confident that their vehicle was running as smoothly as it could. At home, Justin was a devoted father and husband. His wife, Linda, had always been supportive of his work, even if it didn't always provide the kind of financial comfort that others might have. They lived in a modest home, nothing too fancy, but it was theirs. Justin had put in the hard work to provide for his family. And although they didn't have much, they had everything they needed. He'd always dreamed of giving his family more, a bigger house, vacations, financial security, but that dream had always seemed just out of reach. Still, he kept his head down, working hard every day, hoping that someday his efforts would pay off. But there was one thing Justin couldn't ignore: the growing tension with his son, Ethan. Ethan had always been a bright kid, full of potential, but as he grew older, Justin noticed a shift. Ethan had become more distant, more critical of the life Justin had built. At first, it was small comments, remarks about how Justin worked too much or how he needed to find a better job. But over time, those comments became more pointed, more hurtful. Ethan had always been a good student, a kid who excelled in school, and Justin couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in that. But as Ethan entered his teenage years, he started distancing himself from the family. He was always out with friends, too busy to spend time in the shop or even talk to Justin. And when he did come around, it was often to make fun of Justin's job. "You really think fixing cars is a career?" Ethan would say, his tone dripping with disdain. "You're stuck in this garage, Dad. People with real jobs Don't do this kind of work." The words stung, but Justin brushed them off, telling himself that Ethan didn't understand. After all, Ethan had his sights set on bigger things. He wanted to go to college, get a degree, work in an office, wear a suit. In many ways, Justin was proud of his son's ambition. He wanted Ethan to succeed, to have the opportunities that he never had. But he also wanted Ethan to understand that there was no shame in hard work, no shame in doing something with your hands to make an honest living. The tension between them grew, though, as Ethan got older. He began to mock Justin's job more openly, calling it low-class and unimportant. It was as if Justin's entire life's work, the countless hours he had spent fixing cars, the blood, sweat, and tears he had poured into his craft, meant nothing to Ethan. It broke Justin's heart. Linda could see it too, the way Ethan's words hurt Justin. She'd seen him work tirelessly for years, always putting the family first. But it was clear that Ethan's judgment was starting to erode Justin's confidence. And that was the hardest part, to see Justin, a man who had always prided himself on his strength, slowly beginning to doubt his worth. One night, after another conversation where Ethan dismissed his job as just a mechanic, Justin stood in the quiet of the shop, staring at the rows of cars that he had repaired over the years. His hands were calloused and worn, the same hands that had built a life for his family. But at that moment, they felt like they were empty of purpose, empty of recognition. It was as if all of his efforts, everything he had worked for, had been reduced to nothing more than a punchline. Justin had spent a lifetime building this shop, pouring his heart and soul into it. And now, it wasn't just about the business. It was about the legacy he was leaving behind, the future they were building together. But it wasn't just about the success of the business. It was about something deeper. It was about proving that no matter where you start, no matter how hard you work, there's always room for growth. There's always a way to rise above the limitations and build something that lasts. The investor walked into the room, shaking both their hands with a firm grip. He was an older man, wearing a sharp suit and an air of confidence that made the room feel even smaller. As they sat down and began discussing the business plans, Justin could feel the weight of the moment. But this time, it wasn't just him carrying that weight. Ethan was right there beside him, matching his stride, ready to take on whatever came next. The conversation flowed smoothly. Ethan handled most of the pitch, detailing their expansion plans, the improvements they'd made to the shop, and the projected financials. Justin listened, nodding with approval as Ethan spoke with authority and passion. It was clear to him now that Ethan had truly grown into the man he always hoped he would become. He wasn't just talking the talk, he was walking the walk. And Justin couldn't have been prouder. The investor seemed impressed. After a few hours of back-and-forth discussion, he leaned back in his chair, nodding thoughtfully. "This is a solid plan," he said, finally breaking the silence. "I like what I'm hearing. I'm in. I'll get the paperwork drawn up, and we'll move forward with the investment." Justin's heart skipped a beat. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a lifetime's worth of work. This wasn't just a financial deal. It was the culmination of everything Justin had worked for, everything he had sacrificed. It was proof that hard work, dedication, and a little bit of faith in the process could lead to something much bigger than anyone could have imagined. As they left the meeting, Ethan turned to Justin with a smile. "We did it, Dad. This is just the beginning." Justin's eyes softened as he looked at his son. "No, Ethan, you did it. This is your success, too. We're in this together." As they walked out of the building, Justin felt a sense of peace settle over him. This wasn't the end of the journey. It was just the beginning. But for the first time in a long time, Justin felt like he wasn't alone. The weight of the years of hard work, the doubts, the moments of frustration, all of it seemed to lift off his shoulders. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about the relationship they had built, the trust that had been restored, and the legacy they would create together. Later that evening, after the paperwork was signed and the deal was official, Justin and Ethan stood in the shop together, looking at the blueprint for the future that now felt within reach. The garage, once a modest place where cars were fixed, now felt like the beginning of something much larger. They had started small, but the vision had always been big. And now, With the investment secured, they were ready to take that leap. "We're really doing this, aren't we?" Ethan asked, his voice filled with awe. "We've been doing it all along," Justin said, his voice steady and filled with conviction. "We've been building this together, step by step, and now it's just getting started." In that moment, Justin realized something. All those years of hard work, of pouring everything into his job, had led him to this point. But it wasn't just about the business or the money. It was about the journey. It was about the lessons learned along the way and the relationships built, the way that each challenge, each setback, had shaped them both into the people they were today. The future was uncertain, of course. There would be challenges ahead. More late nights, more hard work, more moments of doubt. But for the first time, Justin felt ready. He wasn't just doing this for his family anymore. He was doing it for himself, for Ethan, for the legacy they were building together. And that made all the difference. As they stood there, side by side, looking at the shop they had built, Justin knew that this wasn't just a business. It was a testament to everything they had gone through and everything they had overcome. It was a testament to the power of hard work, dedication, and, most importantly, the love and trust they had found in each other. The journey was far from over, but Justin was no longer afraid of what was to come. He had learned that success wasn't just about what you built. It was about who you built it with. And in that moment, he knew he had everything he needed to face whatever came next. What does success mean to you? Is it the title you wear, the money you make, or the legacy you leave behind? If you've ever felt overlooked or misunderstood for the work you do, this story is for you. It's a reminder that success isn't defined by titles or prestige. It's about the heart and dedication you put into your work, no matter what others might think. If you're ready to build something meaningful, to work hard for what you believe in, and to leave a legacy of passion and perseverance, then this is your time. It's never too late to start, and it's never too late to prove that your work, your effort, and your heart matter. So what's holding you back? Is it fear, doubt, or is it the thought that you're not good enough? Let Justin and Ethan's journey inspire you to push through the obstacles, to trust in the process, and to never underestimate the power of hard work. If you believe in the power of resilience and dedication, hit that like button. If you've ever had a moment where you doubted your worth, but kept going anyway, drop a comment below and share your story. Let's create a community of like-minded individuals who understand that true success comes from within and from the effort we put into our lives. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire, motivate, and remind us that we're all capable of achieving greatness, no matter where we start. Together, we can build something that lasts. So let's keep pushing forward one step at a time. That's when Justin realized something. He couldn't just sit back and let his son think that success was defined by a desk job or a title. He couldn't let Ethan grow up believing that his father's life was somehow lesser because of the work he did. Justin had always believed in the value of hard work, of dedicating yourself to something and seeing it through. And now, he knew it was time to show Ethan that success wasn't about prestige. It was about passion, dedication, and doing the work no matter what anyone else thought. In that moment, something clicked. Justin made a decision. He would prove Ethan wrong, not just with words, but with actions. He would show Ethan that success wasn't about the title you wore or the office you sat in. It was about what you built, what you created, and the legacy you left behind. And that's exactly what he set out to do. The cracks in Justin's relationship with Ethan had been forming for years, but it wasn't until that fateful conversation that everything came to a head. The day it all boiled over, Justin had been working late in the shop, finishing a particularly complicated repair on a customer's car. He was tired, his back aching from the long hours, but he didn't mind. This was his life. He loved the work. It was part of who he was. But when Ethan walked into the shop that evening, his face twisted into a look of disdain. Justin felt a knot tighten in his chest. "Dad, are you seriously still working on that old thing?" Ethan's voice was laced with judgment as he stood there with his arms crossed. "You know, you really should think about getting a better job. Something more respectable. I don't know how you can spend your life doing this." It wasn't the first time Ethan had made comments like that, but this time, it hit harder. Much harder. Justin tried to brush it off, his usual way of dealing with his son's snide remarks. But today he couldn't. Ethan had crossed a line that Justin couldn't ignore anymore. "I'm doing fine, Ethan," Justin said, trying to keep his voice steady. "This is work I've been doing for years, and it's how I support our family. This job has value, just like any other job. It's honest work." Ethan scoffed, shaking his head. "Come on, Dad. Honest work. This is the 21st century. People don't need mechanics anymore. They have technology, electric cars, self-driving ones. What you're doing is outdated. You need to get with the times. Find something better." The words stung, but it wasn't just the words that hurt. It was the underlying truth behind them. Ethan didn't understand. He couldn't see the value in what Justin did, couldn't see how much passion and effort went into each repair, each car that rolled out of the shop. He couldn't see that it was more than just a job. It was a legacy. It was what Justin had built his life around. "I'm not asking for your approval, Ethan," Justin said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I do want you to understand something. I've worked hard to provide for this family. This shop is more than just a business to me. It's my life, and there's nothing outdated about that. Not everyone needs to sit behind a desk to make a living. There's dignity in work, no matter what kind it is." Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he just turned away, muttering under his breath, "You just don't get it, do you, Dad?" And with that, he walked out of the shop, leaving Justin standing there, staring at the empty space where his son had been just moments before. Justin stood frozen for a moment, his heart heavy with a mix of anger and sorrow. It was one thing for Ethan to not understand his passion. It was another thing entirely for him to disrespect it. The years of hard work, the sacrifices, the long hours, it all felt meaningless in that instant. All the love and dedication Justin had poured into his family and his business felt like they were being washed away by Ethan's dismissal. It was as if Justin's entire life had been reduced to nothing more than a joke. He had always known that Ethan was ambitious, that he wanted something more than what Justin had built. But Justin had hoped, deep down, that his son would see the value in the hard work he had put into creating something lasting. Instead, it seemed that Ethan had internalized society's narrow definition of success, that success was defined by titles, offices, and salaries. He couldn't see that true success wasn't about prestige. It was about the impact you made and the legacy you left behind. That night, as Justin sat alone in his quiet house, he couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment. It wasn't just about the hurtful words Ethan had said. It was about the realization that Ethan no longer believed in him, in his work, or in the values that had shaped Justin's life. Justin had given everything to provide for his family, to ensure that Ethan had every opportunity to succeed. And yet, it seemed that Ethan viewed all of that as meaningless. The conflict wasn't just about Justin's feelings of inadequacy. It was about Ethan's growing disconnect from the very thing Justin had worked so hard to build. Ethan wanted something more, something different, and he couldn't see the value in his father's way of life. The tension between them had been building for years, but now it was impossible to ignore. It wasn't just a clash of opinions. It was a fundamental clash of values. Justin knew that Ethan's mindset wouldn't change overnight, but something in him snapped that evening. He wasn't going to stand by and let his son continue to disrespect what he had worked so hard to build. He wasn't going to let Ethan's judgment define his worth. If Ethan wanted to see the value in his father's work, then Justin would have to show him, not with words, but with actions. He would prove to Ethan that success wasn't about status. It wasn't about the job you had or the title you carried. It was about the passion you put into your work and the dedication you gave to it. And that's when Justin made up his mind. He was going to change his life. He was going to show Ethan that success could come from the most unexpected places, places where hard work and perseverance were more important than prestige and titles. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be worth it. And as he thought about it, Justin felt a sense of determination wash over him. He wasn't going to let this moment define him. He was going to prove that, no matter what, a man's worth wasn't measured by his job title. It was measured by the work he did, the passion he poured into it, and the legacy he left behind. Ethan was going to learn that lesson, whether he liked it or not. Days passed, but the sting of Ethan's words didn't fade. Justin had spent years teaching his son to be strong, to work hard, to understand that success didn't come easily. Yet, Ethan's words had cut deeper than anything a customer or even a stranger could say. There was something different about the hurt when it came from your own flesh and blood, the one person you thought would always have your back. Each time Justin walked into his shop, the weight of Ethan's judgment loomed over him like a dark cloud. He looked around at the tools, the worn-out machines, the oil stains on the floor, symbols of his livelihood, his legacy. But now, instead of feeling pride, they just reminded him of how misunderstood he had become. He thought about all the years he had spent building this shop, fixing cars, pouring his soul into every repair. He had sacrificed time, energy, and, at times, even his own happiness to create something that would support his family. But what had it all meant if his own son didn't see the value in it? Ethan, on the other hand, had seemed so eager to move on from this life. His mind was set on a different future, one that didn't involve getting his hands dirty, but instead sitting at a desk in a shiny office, climbing some corporate ladder. He had big dreams, dreams that Justin had always supported, encouraged even. But now, as he looked at his son's growing discontent, Justin couldn't help but feel betrayed. Was all that encouragement, all those years of sacrifice, just a way to push Ethan toward a life that he didn't appreciate? One evening, as Justin worked on a car that had been dropped off earlier that day, he couldn't shake the thought that maybe Ethan's disdain wasn't just about the job. It wasn't just about the grease under his fingernails or the way his clothes always smelled of oil. Maybe it was about something deeper, something more personal. Justin's thoughts were interrupted by a loud noise from the front of the shop. He wiped his hands on a rag, tossing it aside as he walked toward the door. To his surprise, it was Ethan standing there, shifting nervously from one foot to the other. Justin tried not to show his annoyance. The last time Ethan had visited, it had ended in an argument, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for another round. "What are you doing here?" Justin asked, his voice more curt than he intended. I need to talk to you," Ethan said, his voice lacking the usual bravado that had always accompanied his criticism. "It's about the future." Justin raised an eyebrow. This was new. Ethan had never come to him about the future unless it was to criticize his choices. Still, something about his son's demeanor made Justin feel a flicker of hope, as if maybe this time things might be different. "I'm listening," Justin replied, his tone softening slightly. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, clearly not knowing how to start. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About you, about the shop, about what I said." He paused, and Justin noticed his son's gaze drop to the floor, as if the weight of his own words were finally hitting him. "Go on," Justin urged, his heart pounding in his chest. Was Ethan finally coming around? I guess I've been too focused on what I thought success was," Ethan continued, his voice almost barely audible. "I always thought it was about a good job, a nice office, and making a lot of money. But I didn't get it. How hard you've worked. How much you've sacrificed for us, for me." The words hit Justin like a tidal wave. His son, his proud, critical son, was finally acknowledging the value of his hard work. For a moment, Justin stood there in stunned silence, unsure how to respond. The weight of the moment settled heavily on his shoulders, and a small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I didn't realize how much it took," Ethan went on, his voice cracking slightly. "I thought you just fixed cars because you didn't know how to do anything else. But now I see that what you've built here, what you've done with your life, it's something that not many people get to do. You didn't just build a business, you built a legacy." There it was, the breakthrough Justin had been waiting for. The apology, the recognition, the understanding. But even as Ethan spoke, Justin couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. Ethan had acknowledged the hard work, but was it enough? Would this really be the turning point for their relationship? Or was it just another empty moment of remorse? Could he trust that his son truly understood the lesson? Or was this simply an attempt to make up for the hurt he had caused? The conflict that had been festering for so long now seemed to come to a head. Ethan was offering a kind of apology, but it felt incomplete, like there were still gaps in his understanding. How could Justin trust that Ethan was truly learning the lesson he so desperately needed him to learn? I appreciate you saying that, Justin said, his voice steady but carrying a weight of its own. But you don't just get to come here and say you understand. It's not that simple. Respect isn't something you can just say. You have to earn it. It's something you live. And you don't get to just decide one day that you understand what I've been through. You got to live it. Ethan nodded slowly, as if absorbing his father's words for the first time. The apology had been a step in the right direction, but Justin knew it wasn't enough to undo years of resentment. They had a long way to go before things could truly change. The road ahead would require more than just an apology. It would take action, understanding, and time. As Ethan left the shop that evening, Justin felt a strange mix of hope and frustration. It wasn't over, not yet. But for the first time in a long time, Justin felt like there was a glimmer of something he hadn't seen in years, the possibility of change. Whether it would come or not was still uncertain, but for now, it was a start. The days following Ethan's visit were filled with a heavy silence in Justin's life. He couldn't help but replay their conversation over and over again in his mind. Ethan had expressed regret, admitted he had been wrong about Justin's work, and acknowledged the sacrifices his father had made for their family. But even with that moment of understanding, Justin wasn't sure if things had truly changed. He wanted to believe that Ethan's apology was genuine, that his son was ready to see the world through his eyes. But there was a lingering doubt, a gnawing feeling deep in his gut that Ethan's recognition of his father's value was still incomplete. It wasn't that Justin didn't appreciate the effort Ethan had made to apologize. He did. In fact, part of him felt a surge of pride. Pride that his son had finally seen past the surface of the job, that he had taken the time to understand the dedication it took to build a life, brick by brick. But another part of Justin couldn't help but feel resentful. Ethan had spent years belittling his work, dismissing it as unimportant, and Justin had never once shown how deeply that hurt. His son had always assumed that office jobs, fancy degrees, and prestigious titles were the gold standard. Ethan's life had been shaped by those values. It was hard for Justin to believe that just a few words of regret could truly erase the damage done over the years. The weight of the emotional distance between them felt heavier than ever before. Justin didn't know how to bridge that gap. He wasn't angry anymore. He was beyond that, but he was frustrated. It wasn't just about Ethan's words anymore. It was about what they represented. The fundamental divide between them hadn't been about money or status. It was about respect. The respect Justin had earned through years of hard work, through sacrifice, and through commitment. Ethan hadn't understood that until now. And even then, Justin wasn't sure if the lesson had sunk in. Justin knew that the only way to teach Ethan the real lesson, that success wasn't about titles but about dedication and resilience, was to show him, through his actions, just like he had always done. Words had never been enough to convey the value of his work. And now, more than ever, it felt like Justin had something to prove, not to Ethan, but to himself. He needed to see the results of his labor, the fruits of his dedication, reflected in the life he had built. He wasn't doing this for validation or recognition. He was doing it because it was who he was. He had spent his entire life proving himself to others, but this time, he was going to prove it to himself. One morning, after another restless night of thinking about how to bridge the gap between him and Ethan, Justin made a decision. He would take his business to the next level. He had always dreamed of expanding, turning the small auto shop into something bigger, something that would leave a lasting impact. But he had never had the resources, the confidence, or the time. Now, however, with the realization that he had spent his life building something of value, something that could thrive and grow, he felt a surge of energy that he hadn't felt in years. Justin decided to pursue business courses. He enrolled in night classes to learn the ins and outs of running a larger business, to understand everything from marketing to financial planning. It wasn't just about growing the shop. It was about proving to Ethan that success didn't come from what others thought was prestigious. It came from hard work, perseverance, and the willingness to learn and adapt. For the first time in his life, Justin was focusing on his future, his growth, not just his family's survival. But even as he worked tirelessly to build his business, Justin couldn't help but notice that Ethan's actions hadn't quite matched his words. There were no follow-up visits to the shop. No questions about the future of the business. Instead, Ethan was still wrapped up in his own world, college applications, internships, and his budding career. Justin had hoped that Ethan would take an interest in the work that Justin had been doing for so many years, that he would want to learn, to see what it took to build something from the ground up. But Ethan wasn't there. He was still consumed by his own aspirations, his own idea of success. One evening, after Justin had spent hours studying for his courses, he was sitting at the kitchen table when Ethan walked in. This time, there was no bravado, no mockery, just a quiet, almost uncomfortable silence between them. Ethan sat down across from Justin, his eyes downcast. "I've been thinking," Ethan said slowly, "about what you've been doing, about the shop, and about everything." Justin put down the papers he had been reading, his heart racing. This felt different. There was something more in Ethan's voice this time, something real. "You're still not sure, are you?" Justin said softly. "You've apologized, but I can't help but feel like you're still not getting it. That success isn't something you can just chase after, not with a degree, not with a fancy job. It's about the work you put in." Ethan looked up, his face serious for the first time in a long time. "I know, Dad, and I'm sorry. I didn't understand before, but I do now. I've been so focused on my own idea of what success looks like that I never stopped to look at what you've built with your own hands. What I thought was success, it's just another way of looking at things. Your success isn't about titles. It's about your work, about the legacy you've created, not just for us, but for yourself." For the first time, Justin saw real understanding in Ethan's eyes. The words were difficult for Ethan to say, but they held weight, and they came from a place of genuine realization. Justin could feel the emotional gap between them begin to close, even if it was only just a little bit. But even then, Justin knew there was still work to be done. The road to true understanding, to real respect, would take more than just a few conversations. It would take time, and Justin was ready to put in that work. Not just for Ethan, but for himself as well. He wasn't just building a business. He was rebuilding his relationship with his son, one lesson at a time. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Justin's life was no longer just about fixing cars. It was about building something bigger. As he attended his night classes, he began to see his business with a fresh set of eyes. He understood the importance of managing finances, marketing his services, and creating a customer experience that went beyond just fixing vehicles. The shop was growing, and he could see the potential for it to become something far more than he ever imagined. But despite all this progress, there was still a sense of emptiness. He felt that he was still missing something crucial, something that he couldn't quite put his finger on. It wasn't until one late evening, in the quiet of his shop, that the truth hit him like a wave. Justin had just finished an especially difficult repair on a classic car, a restoration project that had taken weeks. He was wiping down the hood of the car when he saw something through the garage door. It was Ethan, standing at the entrance, looking hesitant but determined. He was holding a piece of paper in his hands. For a moment, Justin froze. The shop was empty, the hum of the tools and the car's engine, the only sounds in the room. The quiet had always been his refuge, but now, it seemed like the calm before a storm. Ethan stepped inside, still holding the paper. Justin straightened up, wiping his hands on his work pants. He could feel his heart begin to race, but this time, it wasn't with the usual tension. It was curiosity. Ethan had barely been in the shop since their last conversation. In fact, Justin had seen less and less of him as the months went by. But now, here he was walking toward him with that determined look on his face. "I need to talk to you," Ethan said, his voice unsteady but firm. He held out the paper. "I've been thinking a lot about what you've been saying, about what you've been doing, and I want to make things right." Justin's mind raced. He had heard these words before, but this time, they felt different. The hesitation in Ethan's voice was gone, replaced by something deeper. He could see it in his son's eyes, the weight of what he was about to say. Ethan wasn't just offering another apology. There was something more to it now, something that Justin hadn't expected. "I've been thinking about what success really means," Ethan continued. I've been caught up in this idea of what I should do, go to school, get a degree, get a job in an office. But after seeing you work, seeing how hard you've worked to build something from nothing, I realized I've been blind. All this time, I thought your life was small, just fixing cars. But now I see it. It's not just about the cars. It's about what you've built here. And I want to help you make it even bigger. Ethan placed the paper on the counter. It was a blueprint, a detailed plan for expanding the shop into a full-service auto repair and restoration business. But it wasn't just a blueprint for the business. It was a vision of the future, one that included Ethan in it. Justin stared at the paper, his thoughts a blur. This was it. This was the turning point. This was the moment he had been waiting for. I want to be part of this, Ethan said, his voice quieter now. Not just as your son, but as someone who wants to learn what you've learned. I want to build this with you. I know I've been wrong, and I want to make up for it. I want to help you take this business further, to make it something bigger than either of us could do on our own. For a long time, Justin stood there in silence, staring at the paper. His mind raced, but his heart was calm, grounded in a sense of clarity he hadn't felt before. All this time, he had been waiting for Ethan to understand, for him to realize the value of hard work, of sacrifice, of dedication. But in that moment, he realized something else. Ethan wasn't just understanding it now. He was willing to live it. He wasn't just apologizing anymore. He was offering to join him in his journey. This wasn't just a conversation about respect. It was a turning point in their relationship. Ethan wasn't just acknowledging his father's work. He was willing to put in the work himself. Justin felt a rush of emotions, pride, relief, hope. He had spent so many years doubting himself, questioning his worth, and feeling like his work would never be seen for what it truly was. But now, here was Ethan, his son, his flesh and blood, offering to help him build something that would last, something that would carry on for generations. This isn't just about the shop, Ethan, Justin said, his voice thick with emotion. It's about what we've built together. What you've just shown me. It's not just an apology. It's you finally seeing what I've been trying to tell you all along. That success is about the work we put into it and what we leave behind. If you're ready to work for it, I'm ready to build it with you. Ethan nodded, his eyes shining. I'm ready, Dad. I'm ready to learn. At that moment, everything shifted. The tension that had been between them for so long seemed to dissolve. Justin realized that the greatest gift he could give Ethan wasn't just the business. It was the opportunity to build something meaningful together, something that would go beyond just a father and son. It was a chance to leave behind a legacy not of wealth or prestige, but of hard work, dedication, and respect. And in that moment, Justin knew that they were standing on the edge of something new. A new chapter in their lives and in their relationship. One where respect and understanding were no longer just words, but actions. The morning after Ethan's revelation, Justin could hardly contain the surge of emotions that flooded through him. He had spent so many years questioning whether his work, his sacrifices, and his dedication would ever be truly valued, especially by Ethan. And now, with a single gesture, Ethan had shown him not only understanding, but a willingness to build something together. This wasn't just a business opportunity. It was a chance for redemption, for growth, for reconciliation. It was everything Justin had wanted, but never dared to expect. As he stood in the quiet of his garage, looking over the blueprint Ethan had handed him, Justin felt a sense of calm wash over him. He had been at this point before, countless times. The late nights, the repairs, the planning, the small wins, and inevitable setbacks. But this time it felt different. This time, he wasn't alone. And more than that, Ethan was finally seeing what Justin had always believed. Success wasn't about the title or the prestige. It was about the commitment, the sweat, the heart that went into the work. It was about building something that would last, not just for today, but for generations. The shop, with its aging walls and cluttered workbenches, suddenly felt like a fortress of potential. It had always been a place of solace for Justin, but now it felt like the foundation of something far greater. With Ethan's help, the small auto repair business could become a thriving hub, an enterprise built on years of knowledge, hard work, and now, a shared vision for the future. But there was one thing that still hung in the air: doubt. Ethan had apologized. He had made the decision to learn, to work alongside Justin, but was that enough? Justin had been burned before, had seen promises made only to be broken. Could he trust that Ethan's commitment was real? Or was this just another fleeting moment of reconciliation, one that would fade as quickly as it had appeared? Justin knew that trust was something that had to be earned. And as much as he wanted to believe that Ethan's gesture was sincere, he couldn't help but feel a lingering apprehension. The years of tension between them weren't just going to disappear overnight. Justin had been hurt too deeply to let it go so easily. As if reading his mind, Ethan stepped into the shop again that afternoon, this time without hesitation. He was dressed in his work clothes, old jeans, and a shirt with the sleeves rolled up, the same as Justin's. He had come ready to work, ready to prove that his decision was more than just words. There were no more promises to be made, just action. "I've been thinking about how we can get started," Ethan said, a slight edge to his voice that Justin hadn't heard before. There was no apology in his tone now, only determination. Ethan had come prepared, his mind already racing with ideas about how to expand the business, how to bring in new clients, how to improve the shop's operations. It was clear that he was taking this seriously. "I think we need to overhaul the marketing strategy," Ethan continued, pulling out a notepad from his back pocket. "We can't just rely on word of mouth anymore. We need a website, social media presence, and a local advertising campaign. People need to know what we're doing here, and we need to show them why we're the best." Justin listened carefully, feeling a sense of pride swell in his chest. Ethan was right. The shop had always been a hidden gem in the town, but with a little exposure, they could take it to the next level. But Justin also knew that marketing was just the beginning. They needed to improve their operations, streamline their workflow, and maybe even expand the space. The dream of turning this small shop into a fully fledged business wasn't far off. It was closer than ever. Ethan's energy was infectious, and for the first time in a long time, Justin felt a real sense of excitement about the future. But as Ethan continued to outline his plans, Justin felt that old voice of doubt creeping in. Was this truly what Ethan wanted? Or was he just caught up in the idea of success, without fully understanding what it would take to get there? It wasn't until they were sitting down later that day, taking a break and discussing the next steps, that Justin finally asked the question that had been on his mind since the day Ethan walked in with that blueprint. "Are you sure about this, Ethan? This isn't going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice. I need to know that you're in this for the long haul." Ethan paused for a moment, his eyes meeting Justin's. "I'm sure, Dad. I know I've messed up before, but this is different. I'm not here because I think it's an easy way out. I'm here because I want to build something with you. I want to learn from you. I want to work beside you, not just as your son, but as a partner. This is my future, too." The sincerity in Ethan's voice struck Justin deeply. For the first time in years, he felt like his son wasn't just paying lip service. He was showing up, ready to work. And in that moment, Justin realized that the trust he had been waiting for wasn't going to come from some grand gesture or monumental shift. It was going to come from the small, everyday acts of commitment, from the willingness to show up, to work side by side, to grow together. This was the moment, the turning point that Justin had been waiting for, not just for the business, but for their relationship. Ethan wasn't just his son anymore. He was a partner, someone who had chosen to walk this path with Justin, no matter how difficult it might be. And for the first time in a long time, Justin felt like they were on the same team, pulling in the same direction. The real work was just beginning, but Justin knew that with Ethan by his side, there was no limit to what they could accomplish. It was no longer just about fixing cars. It was about fixing their relationship and building something together. And that, more than anything, was the greatest success of all. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The shop, once a quiet haven for Justin's solitary work, transformed into a bustling hub of energy. Ethan had thrown himself into the project, pouring hours into redesigning the website, creating social media profiles, and drafting an advertising campaign that would put the shop on the map. Justin, though hesitant at first, found himself swept up in the momentum. For the first time in years, the air in the shop felt alive with possibility. There was no longer just a father and son working side by side. They were partners, united by a shared vision for the future. But with this newfound sense of hope came an undercurrent of fear, something Justin had been trying to suppress for weeks. Despite all of Ethan's enthusiasm, Justin couldn't shake the nagging doubt that had been following him since Ethan had first walked through the door with that blueprint. Was this truly going to last? Could Ethan really commit to the hard work and sacrifice that would be required to grow the business? The late nights, the endless paperwork, the constant pressure to perform wasn't glamorous. It was grueling, exhausting work. Was Ethan ready for that? One afternoon, as they worked on finalizing the shop's new marketing plan, that fear surfaced in a way Justin couldn't ignore. Ethan had been on the phone with a potential investor, pacing the shop floor, speaking rapidly and confidently about their expansion plans. Justin watched from a distance, impressed by his son's natural ease with business conversations. When Ethan hung up the phone, his face was flushed with excitement. "We've got the first meeting with the investor next week," Ethan said, his voice full of enthusiasm. "This could be the beginning of something huge, Dad. Just think about it. If this goes well, we could start expanding in the next few months. Bigger space, more employees, more cars." Justin nodded, feeling a mix of pride and apprehension. He could see it now, the vision Ethan had for the future. It was exciting, yes, but also daunting. The scale of the business was about to change, and with it, the pressure. The work that had once been a manageable, if tiring, responsibility was about to grow into something much larger. "I'm proud of what we've done so far," Justin said, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. "But this expanding like that, bringing in outside investors, it's a big leap. We're talking about changing everything. You know that, right?" Ethan's eyes sparkled with determination. "I know it's a big step, but we got a real shot here, Dad. This is what we've been building toward. This is our chance to make it big." Justin looked at him, searching his face for signs of hesitation, for some hint that this was just a passing phase, another one of Ethan's fads. But there was nothing, just a deep, unwavering confidence. This wasn't the same young man who had once mocked his father's work. This was someone who saw the potential in what they had created, someone who was ready to take it to the next level. Still, the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Justin's chest. He had always worked alone, trusting only himself to get the job done. This new venture, this expansion, wasn't something he could handle by himself. He needed Ethan, but he also needed to know, deep down, that Ethan was prepared for the weight of what lay ahead. "Listen, son," Justin said, his voice quieter now. "I'm not saying I'm not on board with the idea, but there's a lot more to it than just the business side of things. It's about everything we've built, everything we've worked for. It's about the way we handle the pressure, the setbacks, the people who might try to tear us down along the way." Ethan stepped forward, his face serious. "I know, Dad, and I'm ready. I'm not just here for the easy wins. I'm here because I believe in this. I believe in you. I've watched you work your whole life, and I want to help you build something that lasts. I'm not just your son anymore. I'm your partner, and I'm ready for whatever comes next." There it was, the turning point. Ethan wasn't just playing a part. He wasn't just riding on the coattails of his father's success. He was in this, heart and soul, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The weight of the responsibility was no longer on Justin's shoulders alone. It was shared. It was theirs. For the first time, Justin realized that this wasn't just about the business. This wasn't about making money or gaining recognition. This was about legacy. It was about creating something that could stand the test of time, something that wasn't just for today, but for tomorrow. And in that moment, he knew that Ethan was truly ready to be a part of that legacy. The tension in Justin's chest eased. The doubt that had been eating at him for months began to fade. He saw his son, not as a boy trying to find his way, but as a man who had found his purpose, someone who had learned, grown, and was now ready to take the reins. Together, they would build something great. It wasn't just about fixing cars anymore. It was about fixing their relationship, about proving to each other that the work they put into their lives and their business was worth every sacrifice. And as the days passed and the meeting with the investor drew closer, Justin knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the end of their journey. It was the beginning of something much bigger, something that would change everything, not just for the business, but for them as a family. The morning of the meeting with the investor arrived, and the shop was buzzing with nervous energy. Justin could feel the tension in his bones, but it wasn't the usual anxiety he felt before a big job. This was different. This was something much bigger, something that could change everything. For so long, it had just been him and the shop. But now, with Ethan by his side, they were about to make their mark on the world. As they sat in the small, dimly lit conference room, waiting for the investor to arrive, Justin stole a glance at Ethan. His son was sitting across from him, his hands clasped together, a determined look on his face. The same look that had been there when they first sat down to talk about expanding the business. That was the moment when Justin knew Ethan wasn't just a son, he was a partner.